One of the best things about the selection process was that we were absolutely spoilt for choice.
It was very impressive to see the astonishing range of different forms of creative endeavour, from film and fashion at one end to architecture and portraiture and painting at the other end.
The numbers of people nominated, I think in the end it was like 590 or something like that, so it's an extraordinary figure.
I was enormously impressed by the range of characters. I mean, I must confess, I was relatively ignorant about the history of visual arts in this country, certainly far less expert than the other people we had on the committee.
There were lots of very well-known names, but also I discovered artists I'd never heard of and their great contribution, for example, Jane Drew, Ronald Moody. So the real thing that surprised me was the sheer breadth of talent.
At the beginning especially, we had a great deal of difficulty in cutting this massive list right down.
The fact that so many artists could have been there was such a great choice, and in a sense it was impossible.
Really brought it home to me again once more, just how vital and fascinating the British art tradition has been.
One I thought was particularly interesting was Josiah Wedgwood. I mean, he really was the Steve Jobs of the 18th century, but he came from a very humble background, trained as an apprentice potter. He was a brilliant designer, but also an incredible entrepreneur and innovator.
Dame Barbara Hepworth, whose self-portrait from 1950 is just here behind me, was a really great figure in British 20th century art. She was an extraordinary artist and made much of her life down in Cornwall, but although it was based in Cornwall, her work spread around the world.
I was absolutely delighted to see that there were a number of filmmakers on the list that people had chosen, and one of them was Alfred Hitchcock. But what was really interesting to me was the partnership that he had with Alma Reville, who became his wife. Their contribution to the cinematic art is enormous.
I thought Chaplin was just one of those people who just struck me as interesting. But I think in the hands of Chaplin, cinema became something that just about every corner of the globe knew something about. You mentioned Charlie Chaplin, people would know who you were talking about.
One of the people I was particularly interested in was William Hogarth, the great 18th century painter, satirist, engraver, the creator, in a sense, of modern-day soap opera. And he was a figure of extraordinary importance and resonance who connected with many aspects of 18th century British life.
I'm really happy with the outcome. I mean, some people might think that when they just come into it at the end of the process, they'll see the name JMW Turner and think, oh, well, that was a foregone conclusion. But actually, it wasn't.
I think Turner is a great choice for so many reasons. He is, I think, without doubt, the single most original British artist of all time, the one who's had the greatest influence on the art of Europe and indeed the world. His breakthroughs, his obsession with the depiction of light was a huge catalyst for that minor French movement known as Impressionism.
Turner's an artist who's really stood the test of time. He was respected by his peers and he is still loved by the public today.
This man and his contribution to visual culture as a whole, not just in painting, was something really quite special.
And I think he must be considered a match for anyone who's appeared on a British banknote.
This is very much the choice of somebody who made it, from humble origins.
He's one of the great all-time wonderful artists, one of the great inspiring creative figures.
He's one of the most remarkable artists that Britain or any other country has produced.
Perhaps a transcendent genius.
And I think Turner is as good as it gets for a British artist.
He is to British art what Darwin is to British science, or Churchill is to British politics.